I have come up with an essay question for the Samaritan, and the question reads, using examples from John Lara's The Samaritan, write an essay to show that having power does not protect a leader from facing the consequences of their bad actions, as seen through Bembe's fate. Well, when you look at this question, the first thing you should do is basically read the question carefully in order to understand what it asks. Then the second thing is to highlight the keywords. In our question, we see power, and we see a leader, consequences, and we see bad actions, and Bembe's fate. One thing we learn is that this question restricts us to one character, and that is Bembe, and that is a setting style for many past KCSE questions where the candidate is only restricted to one character. The last time the Samaritan was tested, the students were restricted to one character, that was Nicole. It is possible that the question can be left open, but there's also a possibility that the question can restrict the student to just one character. Here, we only need the student to discuss Bembe's actions and the outcomes of those actions. After highlighting the keywords, the student should also move ahead and look at the demands of the question. What does the question want from them? Using examples from John Lara's The Samaritan, write an essay to show that having power does not protect a leader from facing the consequences of their bad actions. One, we must see the bad action, for example, corruption. Then we should prove that this is a powerful leader, that is Bembe, by getting some textual details or evidence of his power. And then we should talk about the consequences of the bad actions, and then talk about his fate, his eventual downfall. Those are the demands in the question, and in each point, a student must meet all those demands to get full marks. Once we've done that, the next step would be to think about his actions and the outcome. Corruption, intimidating Nicole, and arresting her, being a member of a criminal gang, trying to suppress the Samaritan, etc. So that would be, think about the actions and also think about how he suffers. We won't only focus on him being arrested. We shall talk about him being worried, drifting into a coma, the wheelies, being uneasy, being angry, and breathing heavily. Generally, we see that he feels troubled after being exposed on the Samaritan app. Then eventually he is arrested. Now we begin with the introduction, and we have a sample introduction here. And for the introduction, we simply want you to demonstrate your understanding of the question, but you should use your own words. You can capture those keywords that you underlined and try to paraphrase the idea in the question by using synonyms of those keywords. No amount of power can shield a leader from the repercussions of their wrongdoing. Even up to there, we've already answered the question because we captured the idea. But you see, instead of saying consequences, we said repercussion. Instead of saying bad action, like in the question, in our introduction, we used wrongdoing. Then once you've done that, you can still go further and use specific words from the text, or you can go and use a specific textual example as part of your introduction. In this case, Inspector Bembe, the Inspector General of Police in Maracas Municipality, abuses his authority in numerous ways, believing his position makes him untouchable. However, his eventual downfall demonstrates that power offers no permanent protection against justice. Well, the whole idea is to try and capture the demand of the question using your own words. So you must paraphrase. Avoid repeating the same words of the question verbatim. Do not repeat the question word for word when you're trying to introduce. When writing an introduction, avoid having too many textual details or examples from the text. It has to be brief, and it falls on the first paragraph. Sometimes I advise students to skip a line before writing the first point so that the introduction is distinctly on the first paragraph and it does not appear like it's part of the first paragraph. Now let us move to our first point. I'm going to only illustrate one point here, and that is corruption. Now, This is how the point reads. Bembe engages in deep-seated systemic corruption within the municipality, but his power cannot shield him from the consequences of his actions. That first sentence of our paragraph answers the question because the point is mentioned on that first sentence, and that point is corruption. What bad action does Bembe engage in? Corruption. What is the outcome of that? The outcome is that his power cannot shield him from the consequences of his actions. Always answer the question before trying to illustrate. On the first sentence, answer the question before giving too many textual details or just simply narrating what he does. The next point is some background information that captures the fact that he is a powerful leader. He leverages his position as the Inspector General of Police to run these schemes. Then you move on to his actual action, textual evidence that Bembe is corrupt. He is accused of countless cases of corruption and extortion on page 38. He misuses his officers to extort money directly from motorists every day. His hotel, built with this money, has been nicknamed Motorists Highway Hotel. He uses the municipal police force as his personal outfit for collecting bribes from the guilty and the innocent alike. The police officers collect bribes for Bembe instead of enforcing the law. That is on page 41. We are giving specific textual details concerning our point, which is corruption. Then we move on to the outcome or the consequences or the repercussions. The exposure on the Samaritan app gives him the willies. He is gripped by fear and uneasiness. He is worried about his bad blood sugar. At one point, he drifted into a coma. That is on page 38. Specific outcome, specific consequences from the text. Despite his influence, now here again we are proving to the examiner that we understand the fact that the question talked about having power, and having that power does not protect someone from facing consequences of their bad actions. That's why we say despite his influence, despite his power, despite him being prominent or influential. Despite his influence, he admits that the Samaritan might be their worst nightmare. That is on page 26. The revelations on the app make him visibly furious. He breathes heavily, cocking his gun in anger. That is on page 41 to 42. When Tajo and other officers move in to arrest him, a commotion ensues. Bembe staggers and almost falls, scampering for cover. Together with other corrupt leaders, he is handcuffed and bundled out. That is on page 138. We describe the arrest by giving the details. First, there's a commotion that ensues. Then we see him staggering and almost falling when he tries to seek cover. And then he is handcuffed and bundled out. You have to give those details that show that this arrest was embarrassing. And then you may finish your point with a summary that captures the lesson in the question. Like in this case, we say, Bembe's worry and embarrassing public arrest are proof that even prominent leaders cannot escape ramifications of wrongdoing. If you write your essay like that, then you're most likely to score full marks. Once you're done with that point, you can move on to the second one, and that may be using his powers to arrest and intimidate innocent citizens and trying to get away with it. Like in the case of Nicole. Nicole's arrest may be the next point where Bembe misuses his power, and then you will follow the other steps, prove that he's a powerful leader, and then show his the consequences of his bad action and the downfall. Follow me for more tips.